What made Joe Frazier a legend? Was it the titles, the records, the nights when the lights burned brightest at Madison Square Garden? Or was it something far heavier, something you could not measure on a scorecard or capture in a headline?
Do they talk back to you?
No. Only one fellow talked back to me, and that's Joe Frazier. I hit Joe Frazier with about 90 punches, if you remember the first fight. Hit him with everything. The man took a terrible beating. He wouldn't fall. I said, are you crazy? I hit him there. I said, you must be crazy. He said, that's right, I'm crazy. He just kept coming. I'm crazy. I laughed. I was in the middle of the biggest fight in the history at the time, and I was in tickle.
Didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, just him. Focus on him. Nobody else but him. The idea was to get to the body shot, get by that jab. I challenged him to the jab by moving and getting closer. Because I know if I just touch him one time with the left hook, he was gonna know about it. He said, don't you know God? I said, God, you're in the wrong place tonight.
For the men who stood across from him, Joe Frazier was not a name. He was a feeling, the steady rhythm of footsteps closing the distance. The sense that no matter how fast you were, no matter how clever your words, the pressure would keep coming. He did not ask for attention, and he did not demand admiration. He earned something rarer: endurance, respect that was felt in the lungs, in the legs, in the quiet moments when the bell finally rang.
Ali, I mean,
it's strange. I wasn't afraid of Muhammad. I lost the title to Muhammad, but I remember Joe Frazier. He was the toughest guy I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Smoking Joe Frazier. My mother watched him fight on television, and he hit a guy so hard the guy turned his back. And I kept thinking, I want to be champ of the world, but I sure hope Joe Frazier died.
yeah.
In an era remembered for poetry and bravado, Joe Frazier spoke a different language. He let his silence do the talking. While others filled arenas with words, he filled them with weight. And long after the cheers faded, fighters did not remember what Joe said. They remembered what it cost to stand in front of him, and how that cost followed them long after the night was over.
Why do you think he beat you, Muhammad, then, the last time?
Well, the reason that he got the decision, if you looked at my face and his face after the fight, both eyes were closed, his nose was bloody, his lips was cut, his head was swollen, and he spent 1 month in the hospital. Did you all hear it?
Yeah, surely.
He spent 30 days of intensive care. No phone calls and no visitors. And that's a terrible beating when you have to stay rest for 30 days. But he got the decision. But I'm not complaining. Next time I'll get him.
When fighters were asked about Joe Frazier, the answers rarely came with a smile. They did not talk about style. They did not talk about strategy. They talked about pressure, about the way the ring seemed to shrink the moment he began to move. Joe Frazier did not rush. He advanced, slowly at first, then steadily, like something that could not be redirected once it chose its path. You could feel him before you fully understood him.
I want you to pull up George Foreman knocks out Joe Frazier.
Ooh, it was crazy.
That was a crazy one, because that was when Joe Frazier just beat Muhammad Ali, and then you see what Foreman does to Frazier, and everybody thought that Foreman was going to crush Ali, and they were scared. Oh my God, his power. And here it is, boom. It's so much power. And it's skillful too. It's like he wings those to the body, but he's also skillful with the jab. Oh, look at that left. Oh my God.
There was no illusion with Joe, no pause to admire his work. If you hit him, he did not retreat. If you missed him, he came closer. Fighters remembered the way he kept coming, even after taking shots that would have stopped someone else. Not out of bravado, not out of anger, but because retreat simply was not part of how he was built. The longer the night went on, the heavier he became.
Were you ever scared of anybody in the ring? Now be honest. Ali, I mean,
It's strange. I wasn't afraid of Muhammad. I lost the title to Muhammad, but I remember Joe Frazier. He was the toughest guy I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Smoking Joe Frazier. My mother watched him fight on television, and he hit a guy so hard the guy turned his back. And I kept thinking, I want to be champ of the world, but I sure hope Joe Frazier died. It was time to fight Joe Frazier, and I knew if you hit him, he liked it. If you miss him, he'd get upset. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? But I had this habit of staring guys down. I look them in the eye to psych them out. If they dropped their head, I knew I had an advantage, but I was hoping Joe Frazier wouldn't drop his head because my knees were shaking. At that time, I wish I had even started that.
Men who shared the ring with him often spoke about breathing. about how it became harder to draw air as the rounds passed, about how every step backward felt temporary because Joe was already there again, cutting off space, leaning into your strength, making you carry his presence. You could not scare him. You could not outtalk him. You could only endure him. And that was the moment many fighters understood the truth about Joe Frazier. He was not trying to entertain the crowd. He was trying to stay with you longer than you could stay with yourself.
I want you to pull up George Foreman knocks out Joe Frazier.
Oh, it was crazy. I thought Frazier was gonna die. He knocked him off his feet.
That was a crazy one because that was when Joe Frazier just beat Muhammad Ali.
Yep.
And then you see what Foreman does to Frazier, and everybody thought that Foreman was going to crush Ali, and they were scared. The power is so extraordinary that if he catches you at all, he thumps you with that jab and then just swings at you. Oh, look at that uppercut. Oh, my God. Look at that right hand. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Look at that uppercut. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh my God, it's power. And here it is, boom. For the 5th time he's down. This is crazy, this fight. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, what a warrior Joe Frazier was.
What made Joe Frazier different was not the violence of his punches, but the patience behind them. He did not fight to finish a man quickly. He fought to stay longer than the man across from him could tolerate. Round after round, he returned to the same place, the same rhythm, the same pressure, as if he believed that sooner or later, everyone had a breaking point.
Do you still think, didn't you term Joe Frazier once a no-class street fighter?
A no-class?
Street fighter?
No.
Didn't you say that about him?
No.
You did?
Not those words.
Oh. What was the exact terminology?
He's a good fighter. I mean, a rough fighter, not skillful, not scientific. Takes a lot of punishment, but he keeps coming. Takes a lot of whipping, but he keeps coming until you get tired of whipping him. Then he catches up with you.
Fighters remembered how he never seemed surprised by pain. A clean shot would land, and Joe would blink, nod once, and keep moving. It was unsettling. There was no signal that you were gaining ground. No moment where he looked discouraged. If anything, the punishment seemed to sharpen his focus. The ring became smaller, the air thicker, and the idea of escape slowly disappeared.
Joe has to leave home. He settles with relatives in Philadelphia. Teenage Joe Frazier sets foot in the gym, looking to both protect himself and do some damage. Joe was far from the biggest guy in the gym, but he was the hardest worker. Despite making the team as an alternate, Joe would get his chance to fight in the 1964 Olympics. Frazier breaks his hand in the semis, but still goes on to win his gold medal.
Against Joe Frazier, confidence did not vanish all at once. It eroded. It slipped away in pieces. A step that felt heavier than before. A breath that took too long to recover. A moment of doubt when you realized he was still there, still advancing, still asking you to match his will. Many fighters later admitted that the hardest part was not the left hook. It was the certainty that this was going to last, and that Joe was perfectly comfortable with that reality. He did not react to crowd noise. He did not feed off cheers or boos. He fed off presence. The simple fact that you were still standing in front of him meant the work was not done. There was no conversation, no acknowledgement, only the quiet agreement that the fight would continue on his terms.
To think I'm pretty, I know I'm pretty.
You've been so successful if you hadn't been so handsome.
I don't know. I think if I looked like Joe Frazier, I wouldn't care and just keep walking into punches like he did.
This was why Joe Frazier unsettled so many men who were used to control. Speed could not confuse him. Strength could not intimidate him. Even reputation carried little weight once the bell rang. Inside the ring, names dissolved quickly. What remained was effort. And Joe was prepared to give more of it than anyone else.
And made way for Philadelphia. A father at 16, to provide for his son, Frazier worked at a slaughterhouse by day, and at night generated heat at the local boxing gym. His raging work ethic made an immediate impression.
Joe Frazier, when he was working out, the hardest working man in the boxing business.
We went to the Frazier camp, and there is a single-minded, tough, very impressive guy. I'd never seen him work before, and if I were a sparring partner for Joe Frazier, I'd want to take out a life insurance policy.
For those who faced him, The memory lingered long after the bruises faded. They did not recall a single moment when the fight turned. They remembered a slow realization, one that arrived without drama. The realization that Joe Frazier was not there to outshine you. He was there to outlast you. There was also something deeply lonely about the way Joe Frazier fought. He did not look for reassurance in the crowd, and he did not search for confirmation in his corner. Once the bell rang, he belonged to the space between himself and the other man. Fighters sensed that immediately. It felt less like a contest and more like being drawn into someone else's rhythm, a rhythm that did not care if you agreed with it or not.
Strange, I wasn't afraid of Muhammad. I lost the title to Muhammad, but I remember Joe Frazier. He was the toughest guy I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Smoking Joe Frazier. I got in the ring. It was time to fight Joe Frazier, and I knew if you hit him, he'd miss him, he'd get upset, and I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? But I had this habit of staring guys down. I look them in the eye to psych them out. And this time, if they dropped their head, I knew I had an advantage, but I was hoping Joe Frazier wouldn't drop his head because my knees were shaking.
Many later said that Joe never tried to dominate the ring. He occupied it. Every step he took seemed to claim ground that could not be taken back. You could circle, you could feint, you could talk, but eventually the ring would guide you back to him. And when it did, there was no anger in his eyes, no celebration in his movements, just concentration, just work.
I think that we might as well reveal right now that down deep, you really hate each other.
I don't hate Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier don't hate me. Joe Frazier's got to take care of himself, and I got to take care of mine when the bell rang. And I will admit,
Just like his own nail.
We are
Really?
stone enemies when the bell rang. And after the fight, I have nothing wrong against him.
What?
One day I'd like for my little children to play with his little children.
Oh. Isn't that adorable?
What unsettled people most was how ordinary he seemed while doing extraordinary damage. Joe did not carry himself like a man trying to prove something. He carried himself like a man fulfilling an obligation, as if showing up, absorbing punishment, and returning it with interest was simply part of the agreement he had made with the sport long ago. That made it harder to hate him, harder to intimidate him, harder to break him. Even those who never faced him felt his presence indirectly. In gyms, his name was spoken carefully. Trainers mentioned him as a standard, not an exception. If a fighter could survive Joe Frazier, they said, then maybe he was ready for anything else that waited down the road. Joe became a measurement, not of skill, but of durability.
However, one of the top contenders chose not to participate in that tournament. That was Joe Frazier.
Cassius has refused to be drafted, has really turned this championship picture upside down. How do you feel about it?
Well, I always had want to fight Clay more than anything in this world. I think that if I could meet him one of these days, I could whip him. But it looks like he's out of the picture now, so we'll just take the next man who take his place.
Frazier was advised to boycott the tournament, which allowed Jimmy Ellis to go all the way and claim the WBA title. Joe instead took on the only man to have beaten him in the amateurs, undefeated.
And yet, outside the ring, he never learned how to translate that weight into applause. He did not package his suffering into stories. He did not turn endurance into poetry. While others learned how to shape their image, Joe remained unchanged, almost stubbornly so. He trusted that what happened in the ring would be enough. For a time, it was. He stood at the center of the heavyweight division, not because the world adored him, but because it had to acknowledge him. You could not move forward without passing through Joe Frazier. But as the years passed and the noise grew louder around him, that acknowledgement slowly faded into something quieter.
Heard Ali over the radio call him ugly, a coward. He was so shocked and stunned by it that he threw down the radio and crushed it with his foot.
Yank Durham and myself is responsible for Clay to get a license. And after he got a little foothold, he tried to do everything and say everything to put me down.
Joe was the butt of Ali's jokes that were being heard around the world.
Those who remembered him best understood why. Joe Frazier was never meant to be remembered for how he spoke or how he celebrated. He was remembered for how he stayed, for how he kept walking forward when retreat would have been easier, and for the uncomfortable truth he forced others to face. That greatness does not always announce itself. Sometimes it just keeps coming.
If Joe comes out smoking, I ain't gonna be joking. I'll be pecking and a-poking, pouring water on his smoking. This might shock and amaze you, but I will retire Joe Frazier.
framed it as a clash of opposites. But inside the ring, the contrast was simpler than that. One man lived in words, the other lived in pressure. Muhammad Ali entered that night believing he could talk his way into control, believing that movement and rhythm would eventually bend the fight back to him. Joe Frazier entered believing only one thing, that if he stayed long enough, the truth would reveal itself.
Well, number one is, let's say, we had three of the greatest fights in history. He won two and I won one. But look at the whole situation now. I want them all.
Joe has been tagged merely as the opponent. Rainy Day Boxing brings you Joe Frazier, a boxing legend.
From the opening moments, Ali understood something was wrong. The space he usually owned did not belong to him. Joe did not retreat when spoken to. He did not hesitate when hit. Every time Ali tried to reset the pace, Joe was already there, leaning forward, asking him to work again. Not loudly, not angrily, just relentlessly.
Is there any truth to this sort of rumor that your manager was always against your fighting him?
Well,
fighting
I don't
Foreman,
know. Managers and trainers, and they always against something that you get involved in. You know what I mean? But sometimes, you take a chance at it. Well, as long as I've been fighting, I always had a tendency of pushing my managers a little faster, and I really had to want to go, and they had to put me in, keep fighting, thing like that, because I grow pretty fast in the game, So therefore, I had to want to fight because I didn't want the reputation or any of trying to duck or shun anybody, I'm a fighting champ, and I want to fight George, and I lost the fight fair and square. But you know what I say? Back to the drawing board now.
As the rounds passed, the tone changed. Ali's voice faded. The jokes stopped landing. What replaced them was effort, real effort. Fighters later said this was the first time they saw Ali forced into honesty. He could not charm Joe. He could not scare him. He could only fight him.
Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Who won that first fight?
Ali Frazier?
Yeah, who won that first fight?
Frazier.
You sure about that?
Ali Frazier?
Yeah. I'm going to say this. The fight was
That's Ali's first loss. Am I tripping?
I know, you good, but look, watch this. The fight was so good that the fans demanded to see it again, right? And what happened the second two times?
Yeah.
Ali won.
Okay.
So it's more of a lesson than it was a loss, right? Ali needed that to show what he had, that he is the greatest, came back and did his job.
Follow for more.
Joe Frazier did not win that night by dominating the moment. He won it by owning the duration. He took what Ali gave him and kept coming back with interest. The body shots piled up, the pace stayed high, and slowly, the man who had made the world laugh and listen began to look inward. Not for words, but for breath. When Ali finally went down, it was not just a knockdown. It was an admission, an acknowledgement that this man in front of him was different. Afterward, Ali would say it openly, that Joe Frazier was the closest thing to dying he had ever known, that he had never been pushed that far before. Those words mattered because Ali did not offer them lightly, but the respect came with fear, and fear came with silence. Ali left that ring knowing he had faced something he could not out-talk or outmaneuver. He had faced weight, the kind that does not leave when the bell rings, the kind that stays with you afterward, long after the noise fades. Joe Frazier won the fight the world would never forget, and in doing so, he earned something few ever did, not applause, not poetry, but the quiet, uneasy respect of the greatest talker the sport had ever known. What remains of Joe Frazier is not a soundbite, it is not a slogan, and it is not a clean story that fits easily into history. What remains is a feeling that still lives in the memories of the men who faced him. The feeling that once Joe Frazier chose you, there was no clever way out, no shortcut, no version of the night where effort alone would be enough. You either accepted what was coming, or you learned very quickly what it meant to fall apart under pressure. He was never the man the cameras followed most closely. He was never the voice that filled the room. And yet, without him, the golden age of heavyweight boxing would feel hollow. Legends need resistance. Greatness needs weight. Joe Frazier was that weight. In the end, he did not ask to be loved. He did not chase forgiveness, applause, or revision. He lived with the truth of what he was. A fighter who walked forward. A champion who paid the full price. A man who proved that silence, when backed by will, can be louder than any words. And when history asks what made Joe Frazier a legend, the answer is simple, and it is heavy. He stayed